Thank you. I think I know just about everybody in the room, and I think I'd be hard-pressed to find 5 people that have ever seen me stand in one place for 30 minutes. So I'm going to keep moving around a little bit. I think the only thing more exciting about looking out on a room this size of committed coaches in Singapore, for me, is the reason that we're here, which is the important role that coaches play in the sport system, which was very, very, very clearly articulated in Vision 2030. Quite frankly, the reason I decided to come to Singapore was because the clear articulation of the important role of the coach in Vision 2030, and it's the thing that keeps me going every single day. Could not be made more clear that in order for us to have a vibrant coaching or sporting culture in Singapore, it starts with our coaches. Folks my age will not continue to exercise or start exercising if they didn't have a good experience that was nurtured primarily by their coach in their first experience in sport. We won't fill all the seats in our national stadium for a football match if kids didn't enjoy their experience with sport. And that all comes from the experience that the coach provides. And so one of the key recommendations of Vision 2030 was the establishment of a coaching academy to support our coaches, to help them get better. And this event is the launch of that program. We've made a conscious effort not to call it the Coaching Academy because we didn't want you to think that you'd come in and you'd sit in a classroom inside of a building and have somebody lecture at you for hours. What we want to outline now are the programs that, as a result of conversations with you, that we've put together to support you, our sport coaches, get better moving forward from now on through the end of this year and build upon them. But first we had to start with what we knew about our coaching ecosystem. And I'll just give you a little bit of background. In 2014, we did a research project, a survey of our practicing sport coaches, and found out some information. We found out the mean wage, and we know that most of our coaches are hourly wage coaches. Most of you, about 75%, report that you are professional coaches, that you're paid for your services. The mean average wage is about $40 to $60 an hour, which results in a mean income of somewhere around $1,500 per month for most of you. We also know that less than 50% of our practicing sport coaches in Singapore are trained educators. So you don't enter the profession with the background that a teacher would in terms of teaching skills and organizing an educational program. We also know, partially related, no doubt, to the salary structure, that 58% of the practicing coaches who responded to this survey had less than 10 years coaching experience. We have a lot of more seasoned coaches, but we also have some that don't stay in the profession very long, and therefore they can't practice their skills long enough to hone and perfect them. In addition, we have some background and information about our coaching accreditation program, the old NCAP, now the SG Coach program. And we know that the overwhelming majority of folks have stopped their formal coaching education at the entry level. About 86% of coaches have done the level 1 program, significantly less at level 2, that's 11%, and only 3% have gone on to the top level of our formal education program. So the snapshot that we started from was to get a sense of what the challenges we faced as coaches in Singapore. We found out that a lot of us enter the profession not having had an educational experience to train them to be teachers, limited background in formal coaching education, and the finances and the industry itself doesn't allow folks to stay in it that long, in some cases, to hone and practice their skills, which we know is really probably the most important thing that a coach needs to do. So that's where we started. We tried to figure out what could we do. A couple of years back in 2013, CoachSG did a review and revision of the old NCAP program, the National Coaching Accreditation Program, to make it more timely. It was introduced about 30 years ago based on a Canadian model, and it was brought up to date. A little bit more focus on more timely and relevant sport coaching skills, and we reviewed that and we launched the newly revamped CoachSG program, or SG Coach program rather, formerly called the Singapore Coach Excellence Program. Still some flaws with it, but it was a start. We brought it up to speed a little bit. And then we really jumped in and figured, how do we make our programs more accessible to coaches so that more and more coaches could participate in this lifelong journey of supported practice? We want to facilitate your learning and then support you in practice. So one of the things that we did at the end of last year is we reviewed our National Registry of Coaches, and we wanted to make it be the access point for folks to our professional development programs. So we introduced this provisional membership, and we announced that in December. We mirrored the requirements that MOE had for their practicing coaches, and if you had those, one of our courses on values and principles in sport, and had a basic first aid course, you could come into the registry as a provisional member and have open access to our programs. And many, many, many of you are a beneficiary of that. You got preferred rates, as an example, for this conference as being a member of the National Registry of Coaches. It allows us access to you to support your growth and development. We rolled that out in December of last year with the promise that we would launch this program, announce the formal support programs that we would have sometime this year, and that time is now. Later in the year, as we know, in January, February, MOE and ActiveSG, after reviewing our suggestions and hearing from coaches through some engagement sessions, adopted a policy that starting in January of 2018, all coaches in their employ of MOE schools or within the ActiveSG framework need to be members of the National Registry, at least at the provisional level. So what we've said is we've gotten our employers to commit to support our coaches in a lifetime of learning that we're going to try to provide programs for. Now the charge for us was, how do we design those programs? It'd be good for us to sit in an office and try to figure it out, but the easier way was for us to ask you. When we announced the program in December, we also announced that we were going to engage coaches. We started out thinking we were going to do it one time a month. The response was overwhelming. We went to 2 times a month. We had about 9 engagement sessions. We kept them relatively small, but we had about 200 coaches that went through these programs. And all we did was facilitate with our partners, the Sport Coaches Association, and we asked coaches, what do you need? What will help you get better at your craft? We know a little bit about you, but you know what you need more than we do. What can we provide in terms of supporting your growth and development to make you a better coach? And we sat back and we watched. And I think a lot of you were there, and you saw that those of us that work at CoachSG sat in the back and took copious notes. And we got it down to the point where every time a comment was made about a support program, we reflected how many people actually thought that was a good idea. And then we went back and we looked at it, and what I'm really, really, really excited about today is to share with you our response to those suggestions. We've taken them, and I'm going to outline for you exactly what you told us you wanted and how we're going to start to meet those needs. First off, what we found out from you is that you needed help with 3 things primarily. You wanted some training. You wanted it to be very accessible, you wanted it to be affordable, and you wanted it to be relevant, not sitting in a classroom getting lectured to. You wanted hands-on practical training that was easy for you to get. And not only in your sports skill coaching, but in helping you in the business. Because again, we've got a unique landscape here. 75% of you are paid. You're not business people. You're coaches. You want to coach. But you need some business skills. So how could we assist you with that? We recognized that we love you. You guys are committed to what you do. A lot of people who you've touched love you, as is witnessed by that video. But we've got to spread the gospel. We have to make the rest of Singapore embrace the critical role that the coach plays in our children's development, not just on the field of play, but in life. So we're going to work with you to try to raise the profile of sport coaching, and I'll outline a few ways that we've thought about doing that as well. And finally, you need help. We know that in your world, time is money. If you're not working, you're not getting paid. So every hour that you're trying to get better, it's a zero-sum game. You're not making money in that hour, and you're sometimes having to pay money to get better. So how can we help you financially, and how can we help you in other ways as well? So a lot of our recommendations focus around those 3 primary areas. Within them, what we'll focus on is 3 key areas. Number 1, we've got to review our formal education program. The old NCAP and the SG Coach program, and this is not unique to Singapore, a lot of it is less educational and more torture. You sit in a classroom for 20 hours and somebody stands in front of you and lectures. That's not education, that's waterboarding. We want to try to create educational experiences for coaches that are more engaging, more vibrant, and more relevant. So we're going to focus on review of that. We also want to help you grow professionally. Coaching is not sitting in a class once and then getting a piece of paper. It's your lifetime learning journey. We want to support that through relevant continuing education and personal and professional development programs. And we need to focus on trying to help you with the industry by engaging our stakeholders, the employers, the consumers of sport, and also the media to spread the message. But most importantly, the lesson that we learned is the best ideas from all of these come from, not from us, but from the other partners in the game. Our best ideas for how to develop coaches came from the coaches. Our best ideas of how to improve the industry will come from our other partners in the industry, our employers. And that's why we're so excited to see our friends and partners from the institutions of higher learning, RP, our international partners here. Our stakeholders will be a critical part of this process that we're all invested in together. So one of the real kind of daily reminders for us is to continue this ongoing engagement with our stakeholders. Here are some of the specifics that we're going to do. When you talk about relevant coaching skills, we need to reevaluate our formal coaching education program, along with our partners like RP and NYSI, to make it more useful to you. We know that our program can't be one size fits all. We have youth coaches, we have disability coaches, we have community sport coaches, we have high performance coaches. We need to make it relevant, and we need to continually review our formal curriculum. You need help. You've asked for it. We know it. You need some help kind of getting up to speed on how to be a better teacher. Everybody wants to be a better teacher. Time and time again, we heard folks say, I'd like to know how to teach my lessons better. How do I relate to the kids better than I do now? We'll provide you programs of that, which we'll outline in a moment. We also heard you that the most relevant science that you really would like to have more continuous professional development with is applied sports psychology. Not only dealing with your athletes, but dealing with parents, and with dealing with groups. And so we're going to help you try to, with some programs for that. You also screamed out for a little bit more valuable and meaningful and frequent sport-specific training programs, continuing development. So we'll engage with our NSAs and to provide some of those. So you're not, a swimming coach doesn't have to go hear a netball coach speak in order to try to get something from it. So we'll partner with groups like some of the coaches associations and some of the sports, and some of them are represented here, that are running their own sport-specific continuing education program. And finally, we heard a lot of those coaches who have braved the storm, who have been at it a long time, express willingness to help younger coaches. In the twilight of their career, they would love to mentor. And so we plan to roll out some programs where we will actually bring our senior and our national coaches into a program where we encourage them and reward them for mentoring younger coaches, because it'll just build the family of coaching in Singapore. In terms of ease of access, some of the things you've already seen. We've organized with our partners at RP. If you're now a member of the National Registry of Coaches, there's a preferential sign-up window for some of our formal education courses, BSS and theory, that had up to a 6-month waiting period. Now there's a preferential window for you. We also have talked to Skills Future about using Skills Future funding for some of their online training platforms. And next week we'll have up on our website a large listing of their courses that are online that you can now fulfill your CCE requirements, but more importantly, gain professional experience supported by us in some of these business skills that you ask for help with. We also are in the process of reviewing how we encourage and reward professional development. We heard from you that our current system of continuing education was a little bit formulaic and didn't really encourage people to learn informally and encourage you to go and sit in a classroom. And we want to support your practice and learning. And so we're reviewing that to give credit for not just formal professional development opportunities, but also informal or non-formal opportunities. And finally, we want to increase access and continue to give out support to coaches through our capability development grants, which are available. And that's a lot of money that we can use to support our coaches that, frankly, we've not publicized well enough, that we'd like to try to let coaches know that they can get better with our help financially as well. We also know that quality of experience, while quality of experience is most shaped by the coach, the performance of the coach is often shaped by the trainers of that coach, by what we call the coach developer. So we have to address that. Better athletes and better experience come from better coaches, but better coaches come from better coach developers. So we will partner with NCDA, which is, Masa will talk about, which is the model program of the ICCE, which is the most relevant way to train our coaching educators. We've also partnered with the International Paralympic Committee to train half the world's Paralympic sport educators are from Singapore. 5 out of 11 of the International Paralympic Committee's coach educators are currently in Singapore because we've already launched a program with them. And what we want to do is we want to train our coach educators, the ones that train our coaches, to make it a more valuable experience. By not just focusing on the sports skills, but by helping them to teach coaches how to coach more effectively. Not just the what to coach skills, but the how to coach skills, and also to make the coach education programs more learner-centered, to engage you, so you don't leave after a weekend feeling like you were sat and lectured to or hit over the head for a weekend, but that you were actively engaged. So later in the year, as we'll outline, we're going to roll out our first program to not only help the coaches, but help the coaches that coach the coaches. And finally, or not finally, but I think we've got one more after this, we're going to launch some programs to help you to gain a little bit more recognition. We've had a Coaches Day program for the last several years. We've done it in coordination and consultation with the Sport Coaches Association. This year we're going to go all out. We really want to try to let the month of September everybody hear loud and clear how important our coaches are to Singapore. This is a strong message we have to send. And that's every coach out there. That's for everybody. We have this little tiny event in August and September called the SEA Games and the APG. We also want to recognize those high-performance coaches that have done a great thing. So to celebrate the accomplishments of the coaches as well as the athletes, we are going to recognize through a certificate of accomplishment the coaches of medalists during the SEA Games as well. So we had 120-something medals last time, right? When we have 160 this time, those 160 coaches will all receive a certificate of recognition of their athletes' accomplishments during the game. And that's, we think, is going to be another way that we can spread the word of the important role of the coach. It's like the voices of 160 athletes rather than just the 4 or 5 that we saw in the video. And then a big piece as well is going to be just the narrative building, spreading the story, letting people see 400 plus coaches committed to getting better in a room. This in itself is probably the best visual that we could have. This is what we want the nation to see, that we have this many people who will touch your children, who care enough about them and about their profession that they're spending a day away from their job to get better. We've got to spread that word. We've got to preach that gospel to anybody that will listen. And finally, this is probably the nuts and bolts part. We found a way to help you actually in terms of dollars and cents. Huge thank you to E2I, who are big sponsors of this event. Through E2I funding, we've now found a way to make our formal education programs, BSS and the SG Coach Theory program, virtually cost-free for participants. They're skills future eligible, but E2I will also pay half of the people that complete that course. So now you can virtually go to those courses for free as long as you complete the course. So what happens is when your skills future would likely cover one of them before, you split it in half now, you use the E2I funds, and you can basically not have to be taking time off from your job, losing money to pay money out to get better. We're trying to support you in that way. Again, it comes with a price. You have to pass the course. You have to be participating. You have to. It's not a gift. It's it's a reward for your effort, and a huge thanks to E2I for that. In addition, we've heard your request that you want to coach. Part of it we know as freelancers is you got to address the business angle as well. But you don't really know how to manage the pay system, how to schedule customers, how to market yourself. Well, there's an app out that's about to be released that came to us and that was designed by a coach, national bowling coach Remy Young, that said, we can help with that. And outside they've got their booth. It's called CoachSG. They're going to partner with us for NROC members. They will give pre-approved registration for free, and it won't be free to the general public. And as part of your recognition on that app, which is an app that will be used by consumers to schedule coaching, there will be a special badge of recognition that you are an NROC coach. That's a big plus for us because then people can schedule your time, they'll collect your money, they'll write your check, and it allows you to focus. And what I'd encourage you to do is during the breaks to go out and see the folks at Coaches because they're in the process of the pre-release of this app, and they'd like your feedback. The same way we got feedback on what you wanted from us, they want feedback from you about how they can make this a more meaningful tool for you, the coaches. We think that's going to be a big, big, big plus for our NROC coaches. In terms of supporting the industry, one thing that we need to do is we need to establish very, very clearly what good coaching is. We want our consumers to know what a good coach looks like, what a better coach looks like, and what a great coach looks like. That will help us to articulate the value of coaching. Right now, it's just kind of wins and losses because that's how most people judge us as coaches. We want to establish a narrative about the greater influence that you'll have on the people that you coach. And that's going to involve us establishing a competency framework. The side piece of that for industry development for us is it can be used for the actual industry promotion. It's not just good for the narrative about describing what good coaching looks like, but in consultation with some of the folks in the business world and our stakeholders, we can actually say this is what a good coach should look like, this is what a better coach should look like, and this is what a great coach should look like. So it's not just one size fits all, everybody paid the same. We can establish some competency. The only way we'll be able to do that, again, is if we get everybody to buy in. The beauty of this program so far, the strength has been our partnership with everybody. We need to continue that. We need for you to know that you own your development system. Our job is to support you. We are not CoachSG coaching administrators. Our job is to serve you, to co-create a program of support. Doesn't do any good if we don't have our other stakeholders involved in the conversation too, and they've been very, very willing to join that conversations. Our NSAs that train the coaches, our partner institutions of higher learning that deliver some of our programs, NYSI who helps us train youth coaches, parents who are consumers of sport coaching. All of them need to be involved in this conversation for us to raise the narrative of what good coaching is. And this is probably the moment you've been waiting for. 2014, our goal was to have 4 continuing education programs in a year. And every single one of them we ask coaches to pay for. This is our first flush at a calendar between now and the end of this year, and you'll see that the overwhelming majority of them are at little or no cost to coaches, and they address things that you specifically asked for. In June, we've scheduled conversations with our NSAs to go back. Before we announced, we sat with the NSAs on 3 different nights and got their feedback. What do you think we need to do to make this system better? Now we go back to them and we say, this is what we heard from coaches. This is what our coaches want. What role can we play in helping you to deliver this to coaches? So the first step is to go back to the NSAs, some of whom were there represented in the coaching engagement sessions. If you were there, you probably saw them. But for those that weren't, we now go back and say, this is what we've heard from the ground. How do we work together on this? In July, you've asked for some help with coaching pedagogy. We'll schedule a program or 2 if we need to, if response is overwhelming, to bring in professional physical educators and educational specialists to help our coaches in a practical setting get better at teaching skills. In addition, we're going to roll out another training program for the Game for Life program, which a lot of our physical education teachers have gone through, but not many of our sport coaches, about to integrate into your sports training programs values education. Because you've told us that's what you think is the most important part of your job. Unfortunately, at the end of the year, most of how you're evaluated is on your wins and losses. We want to strengthen your ability to preach the importance of character education through sport. We'll preach it to the stakeholders. They know it, but we need to provide that framework that they can evaluate how you're doing on it. And the Game for Life framework, which was developed here in Singapore, it's a homegrown product, has recently been adopted by the Olympic Values Education Program as kind of a gold standard of character education worldwide through sport. And we're going to roll that out in increased ability for coaches to use. And we're going to follow up again in July with yet another coaching engagement session just to take the pulse. You'll see that probably every few months. We're going to keep inviting you in to continue this conversation because all of these must be co-created. In August, again, we've got this little distraction of these games up the road where we have to go beat up on all the other Southeast Asian nations. So that'll be a pretty big draw for most of our coaches, we think. Quite a few coaches. We hope that there are 160 plus people that coach medalists in that competition. But again, we're going to celebrate the accomplishments of our coaches as well as our athletes for the first time ever. I think this is going to be pretty fun. In September, Coaches Day rolls around in September. As I mentioned, we're going to roll out some programs then. We're going to do an applied sports psychology workshop through our SSI sports psychologists. They're going to help us with that. And then we're going to roll out a program for coaches called Team Up, which again we've done primarily with corporates, but we're going to roll it out for our coaches. That's a team building activity that will increase your skills in how to create a team culture. So we'll roll that out in September as well. In October, we hope to launch our first coach developer program where we work with the NSAs and our other coach developers in training the trainers more effectively. And we'll do another Game for Life program. In November, it's going to be a big month. The SSI Symposium, although it's maybe for a niche of coaches because it's fairly scientific typically in nature, it will be an activity, a continuing education activity for coaches. We'll also follow up with another sports psychology session. And we plan to bring in another international speaker. Off the success of this, I mean, part of the challenge of having a crowd to capacity is you look at it, and it's such a success, you look at it and go, that was great, well, now we have to do it again. I mean, it's a great problem to have, right? The greatest problem to have is too much demand, but it means that you want this, that you love this. We hope by the end of this, you're really screaming for this, and we'll keep helping you out by doing things like this. And then in December, we'll finish out the year with another coach engagement session. This is the first flush at what's really looking to be an exciting last 6 months of our year. Again, these will all be programs that we roll out for you that all came, the topics of which all came from you. Every single one of these addresses something, and we can show you the numbers that were the most prevalent requests for support from these coaching engagement sessions. And that conversation must continue. If we're going to keep this relevant, that's what we need to do. We can't do it without our partners, and this is my thank you to all of them. We've listed a handful of them up there. It's not all inclusive, but we're doing this by tapping upon the best in Singapore and the best in the world to help us staff, design, create these programs. But absolutely the most important participant in the co-creation of all these activities is you, the coach. And that's why today and tomorrow is your 2 days. I can't wait to get off this stage and go back and sit with you. Those of you that know me know that I'm not this, I'm that. I'm one of you. I want to sit at the table because this is what you wanted. And we're really excited about the launch of these activities. The last thing that I'll talk about before we wrap up is this hashtag. Some of you have seen it. Some people said, why don't you use CoachSG as your hashtag? Well, number one, people might think we're selling handbags. But really, it's because this is what you are. You are the single most important person in the sporting ecosystem. Without coaches, sports in Singapore will not develop. You are the leaders of sport. We want to celebrate that. We want you to embrace that. And we want you to recognize the responsibility that that brings to you. We want to provide you opportunities, but we want you to walk out of here at the end of 2 days with your chest puffed out so high saying, the future of sport in Singapore is with us, because it is. So what we're going to ask you to do throughout the course of these next couple of days is help us spread that word. Spread it however you can. Use this hashtag. We've got a photo booth outside. When you take a picture, put the hashtag, if you're an Instagram person, put the hashtag CoachSGLeader, because that's what we are. We are the leaders. I called you the tip of the spear. That's my line. Everybody in our office says coaches are the tip of the spear. Forget it. You're the whole spear. Without coaches, this doesn't happen. So we want to embrace that concept. We want to celebrate that concept, and we want to publicize that concept. So as you do take some pictures, hashtag them CoachSGLeader. In a minute, I'm going to turn it back over to our MC. We're going to do our first photo op in just a minute. And as you start to take pictures, remember the hashtag CoachSGLeaders. So with that, I'll turn it back to our MC, who will describe to you what we're going to do next. Thank you very much. It's absolutely wonderful to see you guys here.